Welcome to this episode of the Autotorium. Today we're talking about what I think is a very interesting car. This car was completely space age compared to what all American cars looked like at the time. It's a French-built car, and it's called a DS, the capital D, capital S, a Citroen DS. And it's a play on words because in French, DS sounds like the word déesse, which is female version of God. So they're talking about this is a goddess car.
Yes.
Descended from the heavens. Most Americans don't know this car. How did you get introduced to this car?
You know, I was working with a friend of mine, and he is telling me about it, telling me about the suspension, the technology that went into it, and I was hooked.
And this is your fifth one. So you learned about the suspension systems, you learned about the engines, you knew about it. Was it in this condition when you got it?
So this one found me. It belonged to a guy I knew, and we're both into Citroens, part of the Citroen car club.
For an American, in 1955, this car was so strange. Let's look at some of the unusual or strange things about this car. What would you say is one of the strangest things?
Its suspension system. It has no springs, no traditional springs, torsion bars, shock absorbers, or anything. It's all hydropneumatics. On each wheel, there is a hydraulic ram, and on top of that is a suspension cylinder.
Besides the hydraulics of the springs, the hydraulic system runs some other things on this car as well.
On this car, it runs the steering and braking. Yes.
It's all the same?
It's all the same. You've got a 7-cylinder hydraulic pump putting out fluid at 2,500 PSI. You've got hydraulic ram and a suspension sphere.
You're talking about the green ball?
The green sphere right there.
How many of these are in the engine?
There's one for each wheel, so there's a total of 4. 2 up front and 2 in back.
Okay. And when you pull this into the gas station, service station in 1955 or even 1975, they look under here and they go, what is that?
Yeah, in 55 especially. 75, well, I guess they did do they actually had service in 75.
Right, that would be one reason why they aren't as popular as maybe they could be, because it's a very sophisticated system. What?
Well, when they were introduced in 55, you can have this weird, peculiar car that didn't look like anything else, or you can have a Cadillac. People went for the
Same
Cadillac.
price range.
Same price range. So a lot of people went for the Cadillac.
And Americans still make choices on cars based on emotion and prestige, what kind of prestige it gives them. An unknown car, even though it's maybe more sophisticated than American cars at the time, it's not going to give them the prestige because it's unknown.
It's very true. And this car, when you compared it in 55 to everything else, it's only those people that really looked into what it is.
Like I said, this car is still used today in major films around the world because it still looks clean and modern. All right, so how does the hydraulic system work?
Well, you have across the equator of the sphere, you have a bladder. And the top half of the sphere is going to be nitrogen gas charged to 900 PSI in the fronts, about 600 PSI in the backs. And you have a hydraulic ram. So you had a rising rate gas spring. So the more you compress gas, the harder it is to compress. So it's not going to bottom out on you. And then the valve at the bottom of the sphere is the shock absorber. So it allows the proper control of fluid.
There is no bottoming out.
There's no bottoming out. It's a rising rate gas spring. Now, in the front of the car, on the driver's side, you have a height corrector that's within the frame. So it'll always know where the height of the car should be, depending on where you've got it set in the cab.
There's no computer brain, it's just you manually setting it.
There is not a computer chip in sight. Yet this car will always maintain its level that you ride at. You have 3 different riding levels. It'll always maintain its level. The rear has a height corrector, so it'll always maintain its level. And this is interesting, because it knows where the weight is, it alters the braking power proportionally to the front wheels and back wheels. So if you have more weight in the back seat or the trunk, gives more braking power to the rear wheels.
unusual thing on this car, it has no front grille that you can see. It scoops up the air underneath,
Yes.
carries it through basically a vinyl bag to the radiator. And I should say, this is a 4-cylinder engine. Well, most people think it's a 6-cylinder engine, but it's a 4-cylinder engine.
It's a 4-cylinder engine, 5 main bearing crank, wet cylinder liners, and aluminum Hemi head. So it's a very durable, heavy-duty engine. Then it's got a 4-speed transmission in front of it. So the engine timing chain is in the back, the flywheel's in front, with the transaxle in front because it's front-wheel drive.
This one is manual.
Yes.
Did they offer an automatic?
Not a true automatic. Later years, yes, didn't go over real well. They had a Citromatic. In fact, when this car was first introduced in '55, it was the Citromatic, which is, you had to shift, but there was no clutch pedal. All the clutching, feathering of the gears and the clutch was all done automatically.
Okay. All right, while we're up here, we should talk about the headlights.
Yeah, the inboard headlights are high beam halogen driving lights. And they're linked.
Halogen.
And they're linked to the steering relay. So it's a mechanical linkage, and they will turn with the front wheels. And they'll actually lead the steering.
Tucker had that on that single Cyclops eye.
Well, Duesenberg did it too.
That's right, back in the 30s, that's right.
Yeah.
Rod, this engine, flawlessly beautiful. What did you have to do to it?
Everything. Well, the car was, it sounds silly, but it did, because I took the car down to the frame. The engine came out. Everything was just in pieces when I got it. I had to winch it onto a trailer.
Did you send the engine out?
No. I rebuilt it in my garage. So I had the car sitting on blocks in the garage, just completely torn apart. Interior out, fenders off, it was down to the frame. I sent all the hydraulics out to be rebuilt because I'm not capable of doing that, and they require a lot of special tooling. But I rebuilt the engine myself, painted everything myself, except the body.
This car is unique because they say it saved Charles de Gaulle's life.
Yes.
He used to travel around in one of these. Charles de Gaulle was the president of France for decades. World War II general, became the president of France.
Well, he was traveling from his country home to the airport, and there was an assassination attempt on his life, and he was traveling in a Citroen DS. It was a 2-car caravan and 2 bodyguards on motorcycles. So they wanted to assassinate President de Gaulle. They shot about 180 some odd bullets. At least 2 of the tires were blown. The driver, because it was the Citroen DS and because of the suspension system and the braking system, he is able to make a high-speed getaway without losing control of the car at all.
So because it can self-level, move the wheels up and down where they need to be, with a shot-out tire.
Yeah, and the steering geometry.
Okay.
It has a really unusual steering geometry in that it's center point. The tires rotate right on the contact patch of the tire. The ball joints are right in line with the contact patch of the tire. So if you have a blowout, in this case, or if you hit something, your steering wheel won't flinch. The ball joints aren't inboard of the tire, they're right in line where the tire swivels. So they didn't get any reaction. The car just maintained a straight path, and he was able to get away.
Great story. I need to see how it works.
So right now, it's set at its normal ride height. So pretty soon, the front end and back end will lift off the ground.
And that's the ride height.
And that's the normal ride height. And the reason they came out with the hydropneumatic suspension was post-war France, roads were terrible.
Sure.
So they wanted a car to be able to handle rough roads equally as well as handling a smooth road. So if you build a car with a stiff suspension, it's going to handle the rough, but it won't be great on the smooth,
Right.
and vice versa. So they have the hydropneumatic suspension that can adapt on the fly. You can adjust it from inside the car. It'll raise the suspension up and it stiffens it, so you have greater ground clearance and a stiffer suspension for a rougher road. Okay, car's all the way down. So right now we're put it to the normal driving position. There's 3 different driving heights. This is the normal one. And then you can go higher. I can put it in the top one. So you see the front end go up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
The back end will go up. And then there's a higher position yet that you do for maintenance, for checking hydraulic fluid level and also for changing a tire.
But you can't drive in, okay.
You don't want to. Because it's up against the top of the suspension.
Right. Oh, and that's how you change the tire?
And that's how you change a tire, yeah.
This whole fender comes off with the removal of this one bolt right there. Take it out and the whole fender comes off and you have access to that wheel, which is half covered all the time.
So I'm going to lift it all the way up and top out the suspension. Then it's got a jack stand you put in on the side of the car that you want to jack up. And then these tires over here will want to seek the same level the tires are over on the opposite side. So both of these will just float off the ground. Once you're done changing your tire, then you put the system back up in its maximum height. It'll raise back up. That jack stand will be able to be removed. Then you set it back down to one of the driving positions.
So sophisticated beyond anything, even today. There's no cars that do anything like this.
No. The invention of valves and controlling hydraulic fluid that Citroen did to develop this car furthered the hydraulic industry from where it was at. They invented ways of controlling hydraulic fluid nobody had done before. Rolls-Royce, who's known for comfort, licensed this system to use on their cars. Mercedes licensed it for a short time. And I should show you the self-leveling. So you get in, you got weight suddenly added to the back, let's say. So the leveling system in the back is going to know that it needs to be raised back up. If you're on the road and moving, it happens very quickly.
So it's going to lift up, you were saying right now?
Yes.
Just delayed, yeah? There it is. Okay, there it is. So it adjusts to the weight load.
Adjusts to the weight load. It'll always maintain its height.
We're driving on a gravel road, and this is very comfortable. These seats are like lounge chairs.
It's driving your car from your living room lounge chair. I invite people to sit in the car if I'm at a car show, and their reaction is, oh my goodness. So when Citroen was developing this car, they tried to contract the making of some of the hydraulic components with standard automotive manufacturers.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it because the tolerances were so tight, especially on the height correctors.
Okay.
The tolerance of a height corrector is plus or minus 1 micron. And automotive machine shops just weren't capable of creating that kind of tolerance. So Citroen, in order to make this car, had to build their own machine shop and invent new ways of machining in order to make this car work.
So instead of accepting and working with existing technology, they pushed it forward.
They pushed it forward, which is why they furthered the hydraulic industry as a whole by the creation of this car.
It's not a dog.
No. This is a road car. Extreme comfort.
And your wife likes this car?
My wife likes this car. She likes to ride in it. Yeah, she enjoys it very much. And I think, when the century, when we moved into the 21st century, they had different surveys done about, what was the coolest car. I think this was voted the coolest car. And then they had another survey where what was the most important car of the last 100 years. And this took 3rd place. It took 3rd behind the Model T and the Volkswagen Bug. So the interior, you've got in the Palace, which this one is, it's an extra level of trim. So you have all leather door cards, you've got leather door toppers, the seats are all leather, and there's very thick padding under the carpets to help soundproof. The back seat, when you sit in it, your feet will sink into the carpet because it's over an inch of foam.
I'm going to bet the hydraulic system was a very expensive component of this car.
Yes, it was. The gentleman that designed it was a brake specialist for Citroen. And he's the one that came up with this harebrained scheme of rising rate gas springs and controlling the flow of hydraulics with valves. And it worked really well. And he said if he was trained as a hydraulic engineer, he would have never attempted it. Yeah, he didn't know it couldn't be done, so he did it.